And another piece of work we've been doing recently is obviously on cycling. Darren, do you want to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Firstly, can you just explain how TfL is delivering the improvements for cyclists? We understand they need to be quality improvements. It's something that we've pushed for, but cyclists also want them delivered quickly.
We do, but they've got to be delivered properly, and even the Cycling Commissioner, who I think has been in front of you, expresses huge frustration, not always politely, to some of my staff, about the speed at which it's done, has come to realise, I think, that actually altering some of the most crowded roads in London is actually sometimes quite a difficult thing to do. We're learning. We're not too proud to say, we're not so proud that we don't admit that we could have done some things better. And I think the climate has changed as well. The publication of the Mayor's Cycling Vision is a very big step forward in sort of trying to deal with it all. And it is quite difficult to do, and there's quite a lot of public consultation that needs to be carried out, and the boroughs who own most of the roads will find that something that they'll have to do. Even putting more cyclists down quiet roads and actually making some cycling facilities which may take out residential parking spaces sounds relatively easy in conceptual terms, but it's not if it's your parking space, and particularly not if your car's in it. So, you've asked questions before about the underspend. There has been an underspend. We roll it on. It is our intention to spend all the money. There's certainly no intention at all by the Cycling Commissioner of not spending all the money. The other thing is a resource issue, and I think that we are really trying as hard as we can in many directions to do this. And you are starting to see some of the fruits of it in terms of schemes which are at least being have now been designed in a way that is manageable in traffic terms, and I think you'll begin to see some real stuff on the ground. We have.
Thank you. On the issue of the underspend, which the Assembly has expressed real concerns about, because it's rolling over and just seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger if you add up the cumulative underspends. And Andrew Gilligan actually expressed similar frustration about that and wanted to see more of that money actually being used. What are you doing about the whole issue of the underspend?
Well, the truth is you've got to have an agreed scheme to get it on the ground, and some of the schemes, the more daring the schemes are, the harder they are with some of the stakeholders to get them agreed. We as a traffic authority have at least got to have got a position where we're comfortable that the thing works in terms of the existing levels of traffic. There are, even on our roads, the boroughs have to be satisfied with what the effects are on frontages and so on. And I agree that it's frustrating. I also think, as he said himself, that actually you've got to get the thing right, because if you don't get it right, you can't do it. Now, some of these schemes to take out gyratory systems are very challenging in traffic terms. I've got people trying to do things in this crowded network that nobody else has really succeeded in doing, nor is trying to do in the rest of Europe.
We know things always take projects nearly always take longer to deliver, and complications come up and so on. Does that not suggest that you just need to have more schemes worked up on the books, knowing that some will actually, knowing that some are bound to take longer?
Indeed it does.
Future financial years.
That's absolutely right. So you'll have seen an announcement about recruiting more people in order to get more design done, so that you can get the designs. But none of them are simple to do. And I think that the Mayor's Cycling Vision created some hiatus in terms of whether or not what we had designed was adequate enough, and in some cases it's gone back to be redesigned. Now, you've got to have some sense of priority in order to it. But I share Andrew's frustration. I share your frustration with it. The only thing I can say is that, like at tube signalling, actually, in the end, we'll get a force of designers who know how to design these things, and we'll get a flow of work which will make it deliverable faster and hopefully cheaper.
That's all good news. Are you expecting an underspend on cycling for 14-15?
For 14-15, well, I don't know. We always try and produce a realistic budget. One of the reasons for the increase in the numbers of people is because we've got to up our capacity to design these things, and I would hope that we would get a lot closer to spending this money. The mayor is pressing really hard, and not too politely, it's reasonable, to actually get some stuff on the ground. So we're trying as hard as we can, but you can't do it until you've designed it, and you've got to go through the consultation process.
We understand that, but I think this committee, in the politest possible ways, is expressing its concerns as well, and putting
absolutely
pressure on.
Well, I get it as well. You know, what this underspend represents is frankly an embarrassment, because you ought to be able to get the stuff out of the door, except that we're trying to do more and better stuff than we did before. If all you do is paint lines on the highway, yep, it's not, even that's not simple, but it's at least easy. If you're going to indulge in physical construction works, you've got to have a scheme, you've got to be able to fund it, you've got to satisfy all the stakeholders, and then you've got to do it. And even in the course of translating doing it, you've got to be careful, because one of the characteristics of doing things at least on our own road network is that you've got to phase doing it so that doing it doesn't create its own congestion.
We understand the challenges, and we welcome your frankness today on this. When will TfL publish a detailed timetable for delivering the improvements to the 33 traffic junctions?
I don't know. I'll have to write to you.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to that.
Can you write to me as well, Peter, and I'll circulate it round.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll write to the chair. That's the right answer, isn't it?
I thought you meant you in the plural sense as the committee.
I did.
So, yeah, not me.
Collective you, not the individual you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to follow up one other thing, Peter, as you will know, on Monday there was the very successful launch of the mini Hollands in the outer London boroughs, and it was very well attended, a lot of borough leaders and officers and so on. But we know quite clearly the 3 winners, but there were 5 others in the final 8. And something that was said to me afterwards was that the other 5 would like to know how much they're going to get, and pretty quickly, because time is running on. They're all going to be facing borough elections and all that, and PERDA will suddenly erupt over all of us in April. But can you, from your position, pursue this to make sure that there is an early announcement of how much the other boroughs are going to receive?
I think what was indicated, I wasn't there, but I think what was indicated was that actually some of the rest of the elements of what people proposed were so good.
That's right.
That it was felt that actually they would come out strongly in a consideration of, for example, LIPS money and other things. Now, some of that will depend on whether or not the boroughs have ever previously submitted schemes of that nature for that purpose. We'll have to see what we can do. I mean, the only thing I'm a bit cautious of is that we're not awash with money. You can't make commitments other than through the proper governance processes. But on the other hand, the Mayor and the Cycling Commissioner, indeed some of my own staff, expressed great enthusiasm for some of these things. So we're going to have to look to see the extent to which those boroughs have got money committed in LIPS, and whether or not that money can be. Some boroughs have got because we do LIPS on a multi-year basis. Some of them have already got schemes that they want to do. Some of them may choose to substitute the stuff that wasn't successful in the mini Hollands exercise for what else they want to do. We'll have to discuss it with them.
Well, several of us were there, and of course, the early indication was that there was 100 million available. it wasn't made clear whether the three winners were going to get 30 million each or 25 million each, but the Mayor himself and indeed Leon Daniels, as I recollect, they both made clear, so did Andrew Gilligan, that it wouldn't just be the rest of the 100 million, but there would be other funding in order that these extremely good schemes could be carried out.
And the answer is there is other funding, but it has to be channelled in streams quite clearly. I mean, if you know, much though everybody's enthusiastic about it, it would be miraculous if suddenly we came up with large quantities of extra.
Yeah.
My understanding, roughly, is that each of the three winners is about 30 million, which leaves 10 million, which may well be able to be allocated in some way, and there may be more, and certainly the LIPS expenditure, because a lot of these schemes are good schemes, not just because they do things to cycling, but because, as in the LIPS programme, over a course of years, we've encouraged boroughs to adopt proposals which do lots of things for many users and the community too. Yeah. I don't think from their point of view, I mean they'd certainly be wild optimists to suppose that actually we were going to produce tens of millions of pounds worth of funding out of some pot that nobody had ever seen before. Equally, if there's real enthusiasm for it, I'm quite sure that we'll find a way, particularly if the Mayor said so.
Well, perhaps you could chase it for us, because it was certainly, all this was said, as my colleagues will vouch. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm just trying to push the pace a little bit because we're getting towards the end. Victoria, Oxford Street.
Keeping it short because obviously we could spend a whole topic on this. As you are well aware, the committee visited Oxford Street recently and are continuing to look for improvements, particularly around safety and the public realm, and how we can continue to make it a sort of easy place to shop, work, live and enjoy. And of course, as you say, there's hundreds of things that all have got to be combined in one very, very busy area. So I don't think we're unaware of that. But inevitably, pedestrian safety and other topics come up frequently. In fact, you know, you've been kind enough to supply us with the figures of that area, that although they are improving, they are inevitably, I'm sure, you, like us, continue to see greater safety. One of the things that's come up is the popularity of the VIP days, of how and whether those could be translated into perhaps more pedestrianisation or part pedestrianisation. I appreciate it's a very long road, so total pedestrianisation might be out. But really, we would like your feeling as to how this is moving ahead.
So, we participated, hopefully very fully, in the work that Howard Bernstein did in the West End Commission, which sought, I think, sensibly to look at some of the individual problems in the West End in the context of the total development of the West End. I said to Philippa Rowe from Westminster that I would sit myself on the resulting partnership body, which I do, and we have recently agreed to fund. We put out a release at the end of 20th of January, which actually, though it was headed making the most of the huge investment in Crossrail and modernised tube stations, actually what it says is looking at in detail how you deal with the increasing number of people who are going to come to the whole of the West End, not just Oxford Street. And I'm personally very committed to doing that because I think that I think the day it opens, Crossrail is going to be full because of the population increase. I think there'll be increasing numbers of pedestrians. It gives us a real opportunity to look at the quantity of bus services because Crossrail will make some journeys, at least many individual journeys easier to do. The VIP days, actually, of course, there won't be any this year because NWEC decided they wouldn't do them. Had there been some, we would have supported them. I think the issues are wider than that, and indeed that I had some really interesting discussion recently with Peter Vernon from the Grosvenor Estates and one or two other landowners in the West End about what you could reasonably expect to see in terms of densification of various things consequent on increasing numbers of people coming there. I think we have to think about it in the round, and you know, one of the questions is how much retail space there is, what quality there is, whether the existing buildings are capable of the sort of serious level of expansion that might be needed if those people really come, and in consequence what the transport needs are. I welcome the fact that it's being looked at in the context of the economy and social composition of the West End. There isn't any doubt. If you go look at the other end of Oxford Street, for example, if you look at the western end of the Tottenham Court Road station site, which is on the corner of Dean Street, there isn't any doubt by the time that entrance opens for business in December 2018 that Soho is going to be a very different place. It will be much better in some respects, hopefully. It will be changed in many ways in residential space, inevitably. And in the course of that, we need to think through very carefully with the two local authorities concerned about what that means for movement in the West End. Equally, and you'd expect me to say, actually we serve 220,000 people a day who travel to and from Oxford Street, the vast preponderance of which, because their local bus journeys are probably all your electors, and I would be as careful as looking after their interests as I would be if they were travelling in Bromley or Enfield. And we do need to take that into account. A large number of people who work in the West End go there by bus. I think sooner or later we also have to face up to the supply and demand issues for the taxi trade there, where it continues to be the case that it's easier to hail a moving empty cab than it is one on a rank, because there aren't many ranks and they're not well placed. And as a matter of fact, 80-odd% of the people who are in vehicles going up and down Oxford Street are in 30% of the traffic, which is the bus service.
And taxis take up a lot of room.
I'm conscious of the time. We could have lots of questions, but maybe we could just note it on the record that we'll come back to this topic.
Yes, we are going to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Caroline.
Yes.